Alright, so it is 7:05 on Tuesday, September 4th, 2018, and I'll call the meeting to order. And the first thing we'll do is stand for a moment of silent reflection, if you wish. So we just had a very brief closed session prior to the meeting, and it was under section 239 2B and D, and we just had one item for the rise and report. Jennifer?
Resolve that council direct staff to proceed as advised in closed session.
Mover and seconder for that?
Moved.
Okay, Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Hendricks. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none. Before I move into the minutes, I just want to note that Councillor Sanders did advise our clerk that he will most likely be absent unless he's able to get back to wherever he's out doing. So hopefully he can be here, but if not, he has advised that he will not be present for the meeting. So we have the minutes of the August 13th, 2018 minutes, and mover and seconder for those. Okay, Councillor Hendricks and Deputy Mayor Stockman. Is there any errors or omissions? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. So we have one item as a timed event, and it's the warden from the County Middlesex, Mayor Dickens, and the CAO, Bill Rayburn, for a county update, and that's at 7:30. So we'll move into our correspondence. The first section is upcoming conferences, seminars, and meetings. The next regular meeting is September 17th, and then October 9th, and then followed by November 5th. The first item for correspondence is from the Middlesex London Paramedic Services, and it's their grand opening scheduled for Friday, September 28th, 2018. Next section there is the recommended readings. First one is from the Blue Water Recycling Association. It's the August highlights. Item number 3 is from AMO, and it's a cannabis update. And then section C, which is the action required items. Item number 4 is a resolution regarding the provincial agricultural systems mapping.
I was filed.
I would support. It didn't bother me to file it though, because I just thought that maybe some of the mapping might have to do with our area down this eventually. And it was to do with agriculture land.
It didn't really, in the resolution, it didn't really say what they were objecting to or what they were wanting, so that's the reason I went file.
Yeah, and I have no problem with filing it as well.
Okay. And then item number 5 is from the Township of North Frontenac, and it's a resolution regarding the new provincial government and FPA standards.
I was filed once again because it didn't have enough detail in it.
Yeah, I had 5 too.
Well, wasn't that to do with the double headers? No?
No.
I
I
was
think it was
thinking
to
it
do
was
with
The training.
covering the training, but
Yeah.
also the double headers, was it not? I'm thinking.
Kathy, do you want to?
No, I believe it's just for the new training that's going to be mandated starting in 2019
For
for
the
new
certification?
firefighters for certification.
Okay. I had down here, Aaron, what are your thoughts? But he's not here.
Yeah. All right, and then the last one there is from the Town of Oakville, and it's a resolution regulating the display of distribution of objectable images.
I was filed.
That makes things easier for Jennifer. And that is resolved that Council receiving file correspondence items CC1 to CC6. Deputy Stockman and Councillor Hendricks. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay, on to our staff reports. Our first one's from our Chief Building Official, Jeff Denley.
Start Yeah, just got the permits issued from June 14th to August 28th. So any questions on those?
Any questions on the permits? Is there any questions at all for Jeff? That makes things even. We're going to breeze through this. Hopefully the warden gets here soon. Okay, mover and seconder to resolve that council accepts the building permits issued report as submitted by the chief building official.
So moved.
Councilor Kinnan and Deputy Stockman. All those in favor? Opposed and carried.
Oh, I just
Yep.
remembered something I wanted to ask. I got a question about a tent permit. We don't charge for it, but you need one. Is there a size limit, and where's the information that people can get if they need to get a permit to put up a tent?
Yeah, there is a size limit. If it's over a certain aggregate area, then you do need a permit.
Okay.
And that's right in the building code basically, and they provide us with engineered drawings for the tent, site plan showing the location where it's going to go, and then they provide us with the tent should have like it's a fire retardant fabric on the tent, so they provide us with that certificate.
Okay,
That's-
so that,
yeah.
but that
There is-
information is available at the township office if somebody needs it?
If they call, yes, I can give them the information for the size.
Because I don't know how common knowledge that is, that if you put up a special occasion tent, that you need a permit for.
I think the tent companies should be, the tent companies most,
Oh, okay.
they're pretty well aware about it now. They seem to, they're the ones basically who either email or contact and with even
Okay.
the building permit application, so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions at all? Okay, moving on to the Public Works Manager's report. Jeff Little.
Mr. Mayor, my first report is a pipe road closure request. CN Rail has requested that a road closure on Pike Road. They're doing improvements to the crossing. The exact improvements, I'm not exactly detailed on exactly what they're doing other than improvements to the crossing. The time period is Tuesday morning on the 25th of September to Wednesday 5 p.m. I'm sure if there's any issues, I'll be notified to extend but that he was very particular in his times that he wanted it closed. On this closure, I'd like to point out that CN Rail has requested that the municipality install the signage for the closure, and I pointed out that that's an expense that should be part of the procedure of the crossing. So I gave them a quote on a price of using our equipment and our manpower, and they accepted that if we could to go ahead and do that closure. So that's a little bit different than most. I request usually that contractors look after the signage, and we just look after the notification to the public. So, but they asked us to actually do the physical work in the closure. So that's basically the report. There's no other financial impact other than normal staff time involved with the notification of the closure. And my recommendation, council approve the request from CN Rail.
Okay. Mover and seconder for the recommendation. Councilor Hendricks and Deputy Stockman. Is there any discussion at all? Deputy Stockman?
Will that be then our little trailers that we use?
Exactly, yeah. And, Mr. Mayor, that will be our trailers. It's a good use for them, and but yeah.
Okay. So it won't take a whole lot to do it. You just pull it
No.
and set it up.
No, yeah. The biggest, again, I don't want to get too loud, but one of the requests that I had seen, that they still have to look after their construction area. That the municipality is not responsible for their construction zone. That we're only providing the signage for the closure of the street itself, and that was given in quite clear language to CN that they had to still be responsible for their work zone. So.
Any other questions at all? I just had one, which is the actual notice that the road will be closed. Are going to have any signs? Or will they have signs provided that says that the road will be closed during that period? Or
Like you mean warning ahead of
Yeah.
time? Probably at this point, to get those signs installed, it's not gonna happen, to be honest. I'd like that, but we will still send out the notifications to the surrounding people that it's going to affect.
Yeah.
But to try and get signs made and installed at this point,
Yeah. Okay. Excellent. So that was moved and seconded. All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried.
Mr. Mayor, the second one is also another request for a road closure, and this one is on Sexton. And I'm just gonna bring it up. It's a little bit different. The contractor is required to do all the work for the closure, which is normal. This closure is going to be on Monday, September the 17th, and we're going to put it on for Tuesday, September the 25th. Until they actually dig up the pipeline and actually start cutting pieces out of it, they can't guarantee the opening of the road. They said it could be anywhere from 3 days to 7 days, depending on what they find underneath the road. A side note, they have been, Korean, who is doing, Korean contractors have been doing this across the municipality, but this is the first time it has to take place in the road allowance, so that's why it's coming forward as a road closure. So I have been working with this contractor in other areas, and they are a very good contractor. Like I said before, they're going to look after all the signage. They're going to follow Book 7. I've asked them to provide proof of insurance because they are working in a road allowance, so I wanted to make sure that, you never know these days. And the detour, one thing to note, the detour will be on Napier Road, which will be on our own road. We won't have to go to a county road for the detour. At this time of year, I don't think that's, it's not like up in the middle of the winter where we might be more concerned, but I thought Napier was just fine. Again, financial impact, there is no financial impact for the municipality other than regular staff duties. And my recommendation is that council approve the request from the Korean contractors.
Okay. Mover and seconder for the request, Councillor Hendricks and Deputy Stockman. Any discussion at all? All those in favor? Opposed? And that's carried. Okay, is there any questions at all for Jeff Little?
What is
Councillor
Book
Petty?
7?
Book 7, the Ontario, there's a series of books, and it's called the Ontario Traffic Manuals, and Book 7 obviously is one of the manuals, which covers sign safety on roads, and the manuals cover everything from warning signs, regulation signs, detours, that sort of thing. So it's a way that municipalities across Ontario can do their job, but in an organized and in a fashion that's the same across the province. So it's something we look at. So.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like just to give a couple of verbal updates, if I could.
Okay.
I didn't do an updated report, but I wanted everybody to know MSO is our contractor for their single surface treatment. I've been in contact with them. It looks like they're going to be in here next week on Tuesday. So that means Scotchmere should be able to get finished up. Winter should be able to get its coat of tar and chip on it. And some of the areas patched, such as Mall Ferry and such. The second update I'd like to give is finally the well at Napier. I've been trying to nail down the time. Lasky's looks like they've got it scheduled for maybe later this week, if not early next week. I was just notified today that they've actually had someone out doing some witching, which is a good sign. So And then thirdly, an update, Walkers, we're in obviously full construction mode. It's all hands on deck on Walkers these days. So it's just a little verbal update.
Excellent. Is there any other questions at all for Jeff? Seeing, yep, Deputy Stockman.
So, you can start on roadside grass trimming too?
We started last week to start cutting the second cut, get that knocked down. It's growing quite a bit. It'll be hit and miss. It'll probably take about 2 weeks to complete. So I would think by the middle of September we should have the majority of the municipality done.
Thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, our next report is from our CEO Treasurer, Kathy.
Thank you very much, Mr. Smith. The first item is the invoice of payment approval for the period August 10th, 2018 to August 30th, 2018 in the amount of $51,545.99.
Is there any questions on the accounts?
I just had one under 00612088245. It was Water Island Canada Inc. Administrative Office. Is that for your?
That's for our bottles of water, yes.
I thought that, but that was the only question I had.
Deputy Stockman.
Oh no,
Oh.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The claims, were those all coyote claims?
Yes, there were livestock predation claims, and that's to pay the livestock evaluator.
Okay. Thank you.
Deputy Stockman.
On the first page, Graham Scott Ennis. So since we've paid the year-end audit, I'm assuming they'll be coming to report fairly soon then?
Yes, they will be here likely in October, and that's a partial payment.
And okay guys, Jeff already asked about that. And Jeff already mentioned about Napier Well. That's it.
Councillor Hendricks, any questions?
They got answered.
Excellent. Mover and seconder to resolve the council approve the account listings for the period of August 10th to August 30th, 2018 in the amount of $51,545.99 as presented. Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Hendricks, all those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried.
And the second report is in regards to the Center Road Highway 81 services. It's some reports that we received from Strathroy Caradoc in regards to changes to the 2018 water and wastewater rates. They've updated some of their bylaws just to make sure that everything is at full cost recovery, and that does affect anyone who is doing any development or upgrading any water meters. There's no impact for the township. Items number 2, 3, and 4 are proposals that they have to do repairs at various projects in their municipality. The first one is the Strathroy wastewater treatment plant roof repair. The report there advises that they have awarded the contract to Ben Linker Roofing Limited in the amount of $13,900. That is excluding HST. Our portion of that is estimated to be just under $2,000. We do have $25,000 budgeted in our budget for this year, so that can be covered in the 2018 budget. The second one is in regards to blower line repairs that have become necessary once they started doing further investigation. They started doing some has suggested doing spot repairs, and now found that they do need to, in fact, replace a section of pipe. And they've estimated, they have not completed the construction tendering or anything, so the upset limit is $125,000 for the project, which means our portion is $16,062.50. Based on the numbers as presented, we won't know what the final number is until we receive the information from Strathroy Caradoc, but that is within the budget amount. And the third item that will affect us financially is the Albert Street Sewage Pumping Station. They have found that there are some major repairs that are required to the pumping station, and they are recommending that they be carried out in the 2018 budget. They have tendered the project, and the bids are included in the report from Strathroy Caradoc. The total required budget is estimated at $270,000, which means our portion will be $34,695. plus or minus once they get the final bills in for all of the costs. That is in excess of the amount that we have budgeted for 2018. We do, however, have reserve set up for sewer operations and capital projects. We'll be able to take that money once we get the final invoice from either of those to help fund the costs that are in excess of the $25,000 we budgeted this year, which will be approximately $27,795. So until we see the final invoices from Strathroy, there is no recommendation on how we're going to fund those, and we can take a look at that when we do get the invoices.
Okay, is there any questions at all? Deputy Stockman?
We can do this because it's under 50,000.
Correct.
Because we're lamed up.
Correct. We did budget for 25,000, so it's still aggregate is under the 50,000 amount, and it would happen regardless. So we are obligated through our agreement with Strathroy CareDoc to pay those costs. So we're not approving anything in our own budget, but approving to pay the costs, which we can use from reserves this year.
Okay, any other questions at all? So Kathy, you don't have a recommendation then?
No,
Or how would you like to move forward?
we have no recommendation at this time. It's just for your information, and once the final invoices come in, we'll come back with the recommendations on the funding of the invoices.
So Jennifer, do you just want to have a motion then to receive this for information?
Correct, yes.
Okay. Mover and seconder for that. Deputy Stockman and Councillor Hendricks. All those in favor? Opposed, and that's carried. Okay, is there any questions at all for Kathy? Seeing none. We're 3 minutes ahead of time for the ward and the CAO. When I come forward, I think Jennifer is going to, or is it all set up?
It's just all set up.
So I have to tell you that Bill's had pneumonia.
Oh, not this morning.
No, you still got it. Don't let him fool you. So I feel like I feel like I'm with Neil because he shoved everything in my purse. Listen, I don't think I can find your medicine, but look, I'll help you. I got a halls for you. I know. So you should never carry a big purse, right? Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's what happens.
I did have pneumonia last Thursday, and I'm told that I haven't been contagious since Sunday. My advice to anybody is not to get pneumonia. It's a really bad thing to have, and he told me that it would be in 3 weeks I'd feel 80%. I said, well, I felt 120% before, so I'm on the right track. Okay, the word
I tried to convince him to stay home because I think he's still doing too much, but he didn't listen.
This is going to be fun.
You can't name Bill.
So thank you.
I'm upset though. Gerald's not here. We should come back another day.
Yes.
Is he going to be here later? Or?
Might be.
He might be. We're not sure.
He'll watch the replay and call me tomorrow.
Yes.
I was hoping to see Gerald too. Well, thank you for having Bill and myself out to see you for the annual Warden's visit. And you'll be happy to know that you are the I did the very first in Strathroy.
We warmed up.
What, about 40 minutes ago?
Yeah,
So warmed up. So most of you will know that traditionally what we do at these visits is we take a look at the year in review. But we decided just to go a little bit different with this and take a look at the year that's ahead of County Council as well as the term, considering it's election year. So County Council has moved the art space considerably for efficient and effective service delivery this past term. To say that we've been busy would be an understatement. But we know that there's still a lot that needs to be done. We do know for sure that there will be new faces on County Council, there are 3 county council members that are retiring, and that would be Councillor Mosley, Councillor Edmondson, and Councillor Shipley. And most of you probably do know that the deputy mayor's position for Southwest Middlesex has been eliminated. So, anyway.
Well, the position's not been eliminated, just on, you're not on the county council.
Yeah, I'm still going, well.
There's a whole bunch of
there
signs
you
up
go.
that say deputy mayor, so you better.
I'm presuming, but anyway, if I'm successful, I will be back at Southwest Middlesex, but of course the seat on county will change. And Middlesex County has 36 different business areas with associated legislation. So County Council will be placing a lot of emphasis on orientation. And the lower tier and upper tier will be invited to participate in that November, December, and we suspect that will probably carry through for January, February, and March into 2019. And the changing county, the inter-outer donut, and of course that tax pie that we all know so well. And demographics, we know that that changes rapidly as well, and service expectations. So we also know that there will be a lot of important questions and challenges ahead for this next term. And I'll leave it to you.
Yeah, and one of the things we're going to talk about the orientation sessions is government relations, and it's going to be it has to be very comprehensive this time because there's just been so much change in legislation around integrity commissioners and everything else, and you know, Mary Gay ran down the list. That's what did we say? Our third of county council organizational memory gone right away without, and that's not any other changes that happened because of the contests that are going on. So we've got a lot of work to do in terms of orientation, and so this is going to be one of those years where I think I'm going to be talking to Kathy and her colleagues about how do we work together on one set of orientation on some key topics, and try to make sure we get stuff like integrity and privacy and all that stuff done together. So, but in terms of government relations, I've spent a lot of time, Curtis and Mary Gill, I spent a lot of time at Curtis Park over the last month, just talking about the need to change the channel on small urban and rural community development. And there really hasn't, I don't have a color, I don't have a party, but there really hasn't been a lot of focus on that. If you look at where the electoral map was developed for the previous government, there really hasn't been a lot of focus on that. And what we're really talking to the new government about is where are there opportunities to reduce costs and improve service levels across the province and the county working together and lower tiers working together. I think most of you know by now that I'm a big believer in not changing governance models to achieve goals of efficiency and effectiveness. I think history's proven that strategy doesn't work very well. But I really do believe in eliminating administrative duplication and consolidating service centers is the way to go. And we've had amazing conversations with the provinces so far. I can describe most of my conversations over the last 8 years as I'll get back to you on that. That's usually, and then they go to some bureaucrat and you never hear from them again. But I don't know how many of you have had the opportunity to talk to members of the new government, but a lot of listening, they have strong opinions, but a lot of listening before forming those strong opinions. So that's all I can ask for. And a really large, Monty and I have had a lot of conversations about how we can focus the lens on rural and small urban Ontario. These are some of the key questions. I know it's campaign season, so I'm sure many of you have been out already talking to those who are running again, talking to people about what's important to them. I think this list isn't that dissimilar from what you're hearing at the door, right? There's a lot of tax type stuff, a lot of things about how service levels need to change, maybe how we're going to support urban and rural. So that's like schools and banks and all the things you need. And so I think these are some of the things that in 2019 County Council is going to be faced with. This is not things that this council is trying to answer in its entirety, but things that as soon as that new council is put in place, I think the wheels of these questions are going to be before them. So let's take a look at these in greater detail. So broadband, I'm a a believer that it should be a municipal service responsibility. I think the province thinks that too. I mean, this is the first time we've actually seen broadband move into a Ministry of Infrastructure, which is Minister McNaughton's area. So I'm pleased by that. I really think that, you know, if you ask most folks, they believe in this day and age that broadband is as important as many other municipal utilities are. And I think that, well, I don't think that means we should provide the service, far from it. I think it means that there should be a level that is striven for, and that you strive for in a municipality, and that you're responsible for. I mean, driving here, I passed over bridges, I passed over curbs, I passed over highways. Well, the county didn't do all of those things, and McLean Taylor did some of the work on the bridges, and other people did asphalt. Coco Paving did the asphalt on the way here. You know, those types of things are happening by a large number of service providers, but I'm responsible for it. I'm responsible for and that's the way I see broadband. I think someone has to have I think the citizens need to throat the choke and say, Bill Rayburn and the warden are responsible for making sure this service is at an appropriate level, or someone else is. But right now there really isn't anybody, and I think the province is heading in the right direction here. I think you're going to see a lot from Monty on this in the near future. Right now we're involved with SWIFT, and you can ask me questions about how that's going, but really what we're trying to get to is a more community-driven service model. The solution for Strathroy is not the same type of solution that needs to be put here in Adelaide Metcalfe. Well, in fact, you have more courtesies, you have much better broadband than I think in most parts of Strathroy. But anyways, my point is that we need to find a model that works for each different individual challenge we have in Middlesex, and they're all different. I can tell you every one of our underserviced areas has a different solution, and we'd really like to work with our service providers to get there. So I think that's going to be something that's on County Council's plate in the near future. Changing demographics is happening really fast. I was saying that Lucan is one of the fastest growing, I think it's in the top 5 in Ontario for children under 5. Or for families with children under 5, and you go, wow, that's not the Lucan I remember. You know, and Tom McLaughlin was the mayor of Lucan. I didn't think of it like that at all, but it really has changed dramatically. And what does that mean? Well, our demographics also changed too, in that there's more people moving to urban centers or small urban centers off the farm. That's another thing that's been a shift. You don't have to look very far in any demographic table in Middlesex to see that. And that's created this inner donut, you know, around London, and an outer donut where the density is getting lower and the inner donut is getting higher. And those people in the inner donut are actually getting services more from the city donut. They're getting some more from London. If I said, I'm going to put a service center in Arba, everybody at the table would laugh at me, because those people go to Masonville for their services. But whenever you look at what's happening out in North Middlesex, for example, or here, the density is lower and getting lower and lower and lower, which makes it really hard to deliver services. And what does it mean for transit? What does it mean for programs for kids? All of these things are going to be facing council. And how do we treat each of those different types, to use, lack of a better term, those 2 different donuts, how do we treat them differently? And is that okay? I mean, it probably is. It has to be. These things run in, changing demographics run into everything from all 36 service delivery areas. It affects all of them, from bridges to ambulances to child services. You know, even bridges. Some of the places where we have the most bridges in need of repair are the places where the lowest density and lowest capacity to pay is. And these are challenges that are going to be facing County Council. Taxation levels, you know, I often splash up a chart here and say Middlesex County is blessed because if you throw, well, I can't throw it that far, maybe Curtis can, but if you throw a baseball towards Huron, you know, the county taxation levels double ours. You throw it towards Elgin, it's more than that. You know, I could throw that chart up all day long, but that's really just comparing us to our neighbors, and sure, that's great, but I still think that I'm challenging my folks for how do we go to the next level. And last time I challenged council with, we go to the next level by forgetting that there's a county taxpayer and a local taxpayer. Kathy and her colleagues came to me and said, we don't want to set up AODA standards, people in every municipality. Let's have one. Brilliant. That's the kind of thinking we want. Let's set up one. And let's have them not work for me. I don't even want the person in my office. I just want one person doing this, and we'll coordinate it. Same thing for IT, same thing for legal, same thing for planning, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We need, you know, council did a good job of thinking about, this may not save the county any money, itself, county taxpayer, but the common taxpayer will save. And that's a really unique thing when you talk to my colleagues. Not everybody thinks like that. Not everybody's council thinks like that. But we have to go, I think, a step further if we're going to move tax rates lower. And, you know, we have examples now of social housing where our social housing costs in Middlesex are extremely low. Ontario works costs are extremely low, and our land ambulance costs. So our closest comparator in land ambulance is Simcoe County. And if you think about that, that may not make sense on the surface. But Simcoe also includes Barrie, which is their London. And Simcoe County is roughly the same size as Middlesex. And if you count population density, you count population, you count assessment, you count everything, Middlesex London compares very favorably to Simcoe. And when you look at our ambulance costs, they're 1/2 exactly. In the last study, they were actually 0.49 something % of the costs in Simcoe. And we've done that by working together. But the City of London is not, they're not the delivery agent. We're the delivery agent for that service. And I think we have to look at more examples of that. Things that strike me as areas where I just don't understand boundaries or conservation authorities. I don't understand why every watershed has to have its own administration, and I'm sure there's some smart person that can explain this to me. But that kind of thinking is what we need to get by. And maybe there's a way that 2 watersheds can work together and have one administration, but still have a governance body for 2 watersheds. That's what we've done in all of the lists up there. And I think those types of examples are things we want to work on. Ambulance dispatch is another area where we see this is something we can move beyond traditional boundaries. So we have a lot of work to do, and if we're going to take it one step farther, that's going to be something County Council is going to have. That's not low-hanging fruit. That's really difficult work. Taxation distribution is something I'm sure if you knock on a door around here, you'll hear about. Whether it be a barn door or a house door, you're going to hear about it. And we do have a changing tax pie. You know, County Council in the past has said, yeah, the tax pie is changing, but it really isn't that different from 2001. And it really wasn't in the last term of council. But now it's past that. It's continued to change. It's changed to the point where it is significantly different than it was before. And I think County Council is going to have to look at the impact of how taxation distribution is, what it's having on this industry. I think they're going to have to look at that. I know personally that I've thought of many win-win-win solutions that if the province and the county and the agricultural industry work together, we can find a solution that works for everybody. I know what it is right today. But we all have to work together towards that. But I think this is something County Council is going to have a lot to think about. And it's not just agricultural assessment. I'm getting increasingly worried that the assessment in Middlesex County is too residential based. It is one of the higher amounts of total assessment for residential in all of Ontario, which is great because we have some big monster homes right around the city, and you don't, even a little further out in Dorchester and some of those areas around Thorndale, there's some big monster homes that are paying the bills. But it doesn't take much for all of that to go away, and residential costs really increase your service costs. It's not free money. And the commercial industrial balance just isn't there in Middlesex County. It is really starting to concern me. And it should also be concerning the agricultural community as well. So taxation distribution is really something we're going to have to take a look at going forward. And fairness. Service delivery in low density areas, as I mentioned, is a big challenge. We've started to address this, and next month is the finish. The 20th? Wow. Hopefully. Is the finish of our 5th comprehensive library and our last comprehensive library. That's significant because we did that in a very short period of time and created immense capital that now needs to be better utilized. And that was really a response to the fact that we have low density areas and difficult challenges getting people to services. But these one-stop service centers that are provided at comprehensive libraries, libraries, I don't even like in the word, they're really information centers now. And how do we take these to the next level now of one-stop shopping? I can talk more about why one-stop shopping is really important for employment services and for Ontario Works, social housing information, a whole pile of different pieces of information all linked together. I've delivered this service in Northern Ontario, and I know that if you want to stop intergenerational challenges related to being in a vulnerable population, you need to link all these services together. The really crazy part is we have all those services in Middlesex. It's just they're hard to find. They're spread out all over the place. And what comprehensive libraries are trying to do is bring them all together. And we need to use technology better. We need to integrate also the work that you're doing here, and in bringing your folks to the table in terms of making sure you understand what services are available, looking at the customer experience, and trying to create more partnerships for each of these spaces. And Strathroy is our first one. I think it's a pretty good report, but I wrote it, so I would. But it was last month they prepared this report on Comprehensive Libraries 2.0. If you're interested in this subject at all and are saying, what the hell is Bill talking about, read that report, because really it is about where do we go with the next level. And so Greg and I and Joanne are really spending, and this is your home library too. Curtis is going to be involved in that discussion as well. What does this look like going forward? And it's a pretty exciting model that we're putting in place. Essentially, we have I think the best of any county in terms of capital now for this type of service. Other counties are jealous of it. Now our programming and service delivery has to be world class, and that's really what we're trying to do in the next 18 months. And how we're going to do it's in there as well. This is obviously vitally important to this area. We were the first to start the Community Schools Alliance because of school closures. Council's faced with population decline, hospital funding needs. Community paramedicine is something I'd encourage you to know more about and what it means to places with low population density and how we're using our ambulance service to try and help keep people in their home, and aging infrastructure in rural and small urban municipalities. And when I say aging infrastructure, I'm primarily talking about bridges in our area. This is something where it's a huge challenge that's going to be facing county council, because often, not in every case, but in almost every case, where the largest number of bridges that need the most amount of work is where you have the lowest population density and the lowest amount of assessment to support it. That is a formula that is going to be very difficult to address unless we take a broader look at it. And there's lots of examples of counties around that are finding out the hard way whenever the bridge goes down that this is something that needs to be addressed, and county council will be no different. We have many of our service delivery areas are at increased risk because we live in a litigious society. I know you think, oh Bill, what do you do that's in that category? Well, we actually do two of the top 3 most litigious services in government, which are ambulance services and nursing home. And those are areas where we've invested a lot in risk mitigation, but we're going to have to invest more in not only how we deliver those services, but also how not only how we deliver them, but also how our partners do. And this is something that has become, I could tell you horror stories about my concerns related to land ambulance dispatch, and Curtis and Mary Gay can share them as well, but we really are at a crisis with land ambulance dispatch, and we are begging the ministry right now to allow us to run the service for all of southwestern Ontario before there's real risk for our population. And why it's even more vitally important for Adelaide Metcalfe than almost anywhere else in the county or anywhere else in Ontario is because when you're not in control of those ambulances, the giant sucking sound that happens from those ambulances comes from here. It doesn't come from London back the other way. It comes from here. It respawns into those primary care centers. And what we're trying to do is have a better use of those resources so that we're not going code zero. There are no ambulances for people to whenever they call. And until we get control of that, until we solve some of these problems, we're going to continue to have some pretty major risk. And it's getting to the level where, I think it's fair to say I lose sleep many times over this particular issue. So it's something County Council is going to have to face. That must be it, because I keep pushing this button and nothing else is happening. So it must be the end. I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Okay. Thank you, Bill and Mary Gay. Is there any questions at all for the two of them? Yep. Councilor McKinnon.
Bill, you were asking if broadband should be county or municipal
Yeah.
responsibility.
I meant, sorry, can I just say it in my words?
Yeah.
So I think it needs to be not a county or a municipal responsibility, it needs to be a public service. Like water is, like fire is, like policing is. How that happens, I don't care. I just think that what we have now is a mishmash of private sector service providers that are based upon an outdated telephone system model. And there needs to be somebody that brings all those groups together and says, here's our standard, we're going to subsidize where it doesn't meet that standard, we're going to even out those gaps.
And I feel it should be county,
Okay.
because then we're getting a standard across the
Yes.
municipality, rather than have each municipality have their own standard.
Well,
So,
I'd even like to see the province come out and say, you can be within this range counties of 50 megabits per second to a gigabyte. You decide, because really that's an economic development decision, right? I may like I'm really not a huge fan of Swift, and these guys will tell you that I'm not, for a lot of reasons. I think they've spent an enormous amount of money and haven't put any fiber in the ground. Consultants, just don't get me started. You didn't get me started, I got myself started. But I'm really a big fan of having a standard, and then municipalities saying, well, I would like everybody 1 gig, and I'm going to invest to make that. Where other people may say, well, that's good enough for us, and we're going to invest in other things. But yeah, there definitely needs to be a standard across the area.
continue.
Yep.
Then with your risk management, I wonder how the county is addressing some of these intersections that we have that have been really bad spots for traffic accidents. And I'm thinking Kerwin and Egremont, Melbourne and Longwoods Road, Melbourne and Glendon and Pike and Napperton. And at Pike and Napperton, we just had a lady come in, and she was concerned about the size of the stop sign that the county has on the road. It's a very small sign, and it blends into the background. Can we at least have a larger stop sign that's well illuminated at night so that people can see at all these crossings? Or could we upgrade it to flashing lights on the stop sign, similar to what they have at 80 and 79 in Lambton County?
So, trust me, this is a debate point at County Council a lot. And the best person to answer that question is Chris Trainey, who's also the president of the Ontario Good Roads Association. I know Chris's philosophy is one that County Council has adopted, in that he doesn't want anything outside of the traffic manual, because for the equal number of times that someone says, you know, I didn't see a stop sign, we have people that say I didn't understand something. No, I'm not talking about Middlesex County, because we don't really have these flashing lights, but in other litigation cases we have lawyers saying, don't do that, because that creates confusion about whether it's a four-way stop or it's some other thing where you see these things in other jurisdictions. So almost everything you just described isn't in the traffic manual. It isn't something that's standard. And when you talk about risk mitigation, that's something that Chris worries about and County Council worries about whenever you go beyond what's in the traffic manual. I understand what you're saying, that and often whenever we go back and we see a bad accident, it can be, we do look at every one of those, as you probably know, and try to understand what happened. We also have the same thing, we wondered what was going on with train crossings for a while, right? And I think you know in your neighborhood, the ones I'm referring to, and is that just distracted driving when you look back at all the video and everything else, or is it weeds that are growing in all of these things get looked at, but when it comes to changes to how an intersection is programmed, so to speak, County Council's been pretty firm that it has to be in the traffic manual, everything you've just described. And I know you're giving me examples of where it happens elsewhere, but those things aren't in the traffic manual, and they get nervous, and so do I, when we go outside of there. But I think I'll get Chris to give you a more fulsome answer about that, because we actually did do a full report on the risks, the pros and cons because I think it was for in your neighborhood.
Let's take the lake down at Haggerty.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, Haggerty and
because
What's
we-
another one?
Right. We also have situations where we are retrofitting back to the standard that is now when the communities become used to something, right? So, anyways, I'll get you a more fulsome answer on that, but that's something that gets debated quite often.
And then my last question is, you were talking about the future examples, and conservation authorities was one that you mentioned. And I'm just not really convinced that you're going to save money, because when you start amalgamating or joining together, it never seems to be a reduction in staff. It always seems to be bumping the staff up. So
Yeah.
I don't see where you're going to
I
cost
agree,
save.
but that's I 1000% agree. Actually, that's why I said that history's shown us that doesn't work. So that's not what I'm suggesting. What I'm suggesting is that, because what happens is, whenever you've been in this business longer than me, and you know whenever government wants to cut money, the first thing to do is look for low-hanging fruit. And that's often, we even had the Fewer Municipal Councillors Act that was passed. It didn't really accomplish anything. It accomplished what you described. And so in my slide, what I actually said was, don't change the governance models, keep them the same. Because I'm a firm believer in that local look from a governance perspective is, one, very inexpensive. Two, it's very helpful. It means that there has to be less eyes, in my mind, out there watching what's going on. But consolidation of administrations, I have 36 different business areas, and I can tell you all 36 of them think that they should have their own payroll system. No, ridiculous. They all think they should have their own accounting system. No, they all think they should have their own HR people. No, because right now you can go on to FreshBooks, and there's 750 Canadian businesses all using the same accounting software, all from the same platform. And my point is that you don't need all these different administrative structures. What you need is different governance bodies with one administrative structure. And there's been plenty of examples where that has worked and will continue to work. So I think what I'm suggesting is the opposite of what you described. And we're trying to lead by example in that. It's not like we've said everybody else should go do that. We're trying to lead by example in that we really did have a different payroll system for Strathmere Lodge. We really did have a different one for ambulance when they're under contractors. And I've heard all these arguments, and I'm like, no, it's all going to be combined under one. And there's more that can be done there. Technology allows it, right?
So what were some of the examples that you would give showing the effectiveness that you've described of the governance?
Well, I think I just gave you ours.
No, but other places other than yours.
Oh, other places other than mine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think the opposite is easy to show. I don't think municipal restructurings have done what they should do. Unfortunately, there aren't that many examples in the municipal world of where people have joined administrations. But if you look at what we've done with land ambulance, for example, so the best example that's out there on a large scale that you can use would be any CMSM service, so Consolidated Municipal Service Manager Service. So for example, Ontario Works is actually delivered and governed by Middlesex County and delivered and governed by London in their two jurisdictions. But the broader provincial administration is done by one body, City of London. And so we don't have our own team doing all that. There's one that does that, and that's them. Same thing with social housing. We used to have two completely different administrations. Now we have two different governance bodies, but one administration. Land ambulance is the exact same example, because there used to be 4, and now there's 1. So any of those CMSM services that have come together, huge savings. There's more that can be done, but huge savings.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions?
Is Gerald going to call one in? Because I'm really upset about this. I'm not joking.
I saw a truck driving, I thought it might be him, but.
Can you do a Gerald impression of some sort? Drop your voice down.
Oh, no.
No, you have to lean back though.
Yeah, you gotta lean back. Listen, you little. I'll have to wait. I'll have to call him on the phone. He's running again, right?
No.
Oh no, this is really sad for you then.
Oh.
Oh. Alright.
Tiffany or Stockton, any questions? No. I just had two, if I could, just because I think they're questions that would be great to answer for council, and not to stress you out, but Swift. Where are we
Stress me
at?
out?
Yeah, Swift.
Odds are low.
Yeah, where? So kind of like where's county council at? The
Yeah, Swift.
process
Okay,
for
so Swift, what they've done with every other county but ours is they've requested money, the county's paid them in advance, and they've promised something, and they promised that the answers are going to be fiber to everyone's home, which is complete BS. It's not even not even physically possible. And they promised that how this would roll out would be in place this summer. Again, none of that's happened. So what county council did is they said, Bill, we don't want to sort of throw money at this when we don't know. And I said, well, let's do this. Let's describe an outcome. Let's say that we want all of our underserviced areas serviced at this minimum standard. So we know the 8 pockets of Middlesex County that are underserviced by national standards. And we know what the standard should be in terms of megabits per second. So we said to Swift, when you service all of those areas and show us, and we test that all of those areas are connected at that standard so they're no longer underserviced in Middlesex County, then we'll give you the money. And so we're holding it there. We're the only ones that actually have a contract with it. We have a contract that says if you meet these obligations, anybody can ask for it. We'll be glad to provide it for you. But when you meet these obligations, then you get your money and not before. So that's what we have.
Perfect. The next one is Strathmere Lodge,
Yeah.
and the lands that were available for sale and where
Right.
it's at.
Yeah, so the lands that are available for sale are the last, in my view, and maybe there's a difference of opinion, but are kind of the last real residential development lands that are out there in Strathroy. And we have put them out for sale. We have put them up for sale. There is an appraised value for those, and when we put them out for sale, it had to meet the appraised value. None of the offers that we got met that appraised value. In fact, what most of the offers wanted to do, the property is actually subdivided into several different chunks. There's a commercial piece at the front, and all these different. I can show you the property map. What most people wanted to do whenever they replied was they wanted to cherry pick that piece at the front, and then of course what will happen is the rest of it won't get developed for 100 years. So what we've been doing is we have had 2 large developers kicking the tires on the entire piece, and what we're talking to them about is what they're concerned about right now is they're concerned about putting a lot of money into it and then not being able to develop it, the last half of it, for 10 years because the development community thinks Strathroy is saturated right now with residential. So if you talk, even though that is kind of the last piece, many of the developers I talk to in the region say it's saturated. So what we've talked to them about is what's called a vendor take-back mortgage. It's something we actually used on Strathmere Lodge, the old one, when we sold it, which means that as they develop the property, they buy the next piece, and if they don't pay for the next piece, we get that money back and we get the stuff they've already developed. It's actually kind of a big deal if they don't pay it back. So that's called a vendor take-back mortgage. And so we proposed that to 2 different potential purchasers. I have on Friday a meeting with one of the potential purchasers on site where we're going to be talking more about this. It'll be our 3rd meeting. So I don't know where this is going to end up. I mean, it'll come, if I get to the point where we have something recorded in camera, it will be. But I do know that we're not going to be able to sell it for below the appraised value. I don't think that that's wise. And so then the next step, instead of doing that to a regional person, is to, and by the way, I should have said, I think council has a bias towards a regional person, simply because they think it will be developed faster and it won't become a land bank, meaning someone will sit on it. But I'm going to have to recommend that if a regional developer doesn't buy it, moving forward, that what we'll have to do is advertise it provincially nationally, and then someone probably will buy it more for like a land bank. We'll get our money out of it, but the concern is from the Strathroy community, they don't want to see it just sit there either. But it really is saturated, according to developers, in that Strathroy area now. A lot of new development coming on, more so than the demand at the moment. So it's just sort of a bit of a holding pattern right now, what we see. But I expect that if we don't have something by the time the new council's in place that we can offer them, then we're going to have to advertise it more nationally and more provincially. Because right now we're really just in Windsor to Woodstock in our approach to developers.
Perfect. That's all the questions I have. If there's no other questions, thank Warden Wilkins and Bill Rayburn for your presentation and update. I'm sure if there's any other questions, you know how to get a hold of you.
Yeah,
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thanks. Always
Okay.
a pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks, Gavin.
Candies for you, girl.
I saw the See.
That person's actually full of them. Don't let it forget.
It is. Good night, everybody.
Thank you.
All right, so we're at the end of the agenda. So is there anything else for other business? Or anything at all? Councilor Hendricks?
Where are we on the whole garbage bin thing?
There'll be a report coming. It's just the timing of it with getting everything put together for the information that we have the landfill back open again to get some more data for the rest of the year.
Okay, because I'm wondering, we were going to find out if it was feasible to leave boxes, and that's a long time ago. I did have a bit of I went to a meeting of the Imagine group, and as soon as I remember where I put it. So I attended, Curtis wasn't able to attend, and I went. So for anybody that hasn't heard of it, the Imagine group is looking at building a facility. If you've been to the BMO Center, which is adjacent to they're looking at building something like that. They want some municipal input, but they would make it, it's still kind of in the dreaming stage yet. But they're looking at it's a group of people involved with the BMO Center, some teachers, gym teacher types that are close to retirement. It's a huge project. They've talked to people that construct fabric buildings. They've got a huge picture, but they're looking for not just senior activities. They're looking at various sports, indoor soccer, things that there aren't enough of, things for teenagers to do in the summer. Also arts, possibility for arts, because there aren't a lot of facilities. So I was part of the meeting there, and they got input from other people, social workers, different people in the community. They were also looking at who would help put this up. I mentioned the size of our little township, and the fact one of the main issues was going to be, how are people going to get there to use it? Like, if you're looking for people who are maybe lower income, those kids are the ones that need something to do and they have no way to get there. So transportation was seen as a huge issue, and being really careful not to duplicate what's already in Strathroy. So I'm not sure where it goes here. They're kind of looking at, their next steps are like finalizing the scope of it, and they want advice from both Strathroy and Adelaide for building codes, land use, what's already in place, things like that. So I could get a note, and if I want, if you want, I can pass it on to send it on if the rest of council's interested in reading the notes. But I think it sounds like something really interesting. I'm curious to see how far it would go, but it's, and I don't think as a township, we might be involved, but I don't think to the extent that maybe, for sure, that Strathroy Caradoc can be involved.
Councillor McKinnon?
We were going to have the draft township gateway sign strategy report before us. Will that be coming next
Yes, I
meeting?
just did not have enough time with taxes due and everything. We just ran out of time to get everything completed.
And we'll still be receiving the report for Longhorn Ranch in regards to the reduced speed.
Yes, the Public Works Manager is working on a report on reducing speed limits in general, and then getting into specifics once you receive the report in general.
Good.
And that's
Thank
scheduled
you.
for the first meeting in October.
Yes.
Yep.
Thank you.
Deputy Stockman?
First of all, congratulations to the firefighters for putting on an excellent fish fry again. Really good turnout. And as a follow-up to Aaron's comment last week about the contractor, damaging trees and stuff like that, wondering what's in our contract with them with regards to damages to infrastructure. Like if the roads crew takes off a mailbox, then the roads crew we replace the mailbox. So I understand there's been some other infrastructure that's been damaged a little bit by the contractor, so wondering what's in our contract on that.
There currently is nothing in the contract, but that's something that can be built in when it expires for the next one.
And also had one individual ask me, this was to do with some municipal tile that went in May, and wondering about when the building was coming. Just Tim Early was asking me.
Yeah, we're working on all the bills. Like we have to get all the bills in. We have the final invoice from Spreet, so we have to get it into the OMAPRA for the grant program.
Thank you.
Okay, is there anything else at all? Just one thing, yesterday I participated at the Middlesex County Flag Match in the VIP section alongside, I think it was six or seven extra other people, and the Deputy Mayor from North Middlesex, Brian Rupp, got first place, and Joanne Vanderhayden, Mayor of Strathroy Caradoc, got second, and I brought home third. So, not as good as last year, but still in the top three. And I'll have more, for you at the next meeting about county council stuff. I think Bill's kind of covered a lot of the items that has happened. So if there's nothing else, we'll move on to our bylaws. So we have a motion to resolve that all three readings be given to bylaw number 48, 2018, providing for public notice, and then bylaw 49, 2018, confirm council proceedings, and that the bylaws be signed by the mayor and clerk, and the corporate seal be attached. Move on a seconder for those, Councillor McKinnon and Councillor Hendricks. All those in favor? Opposed and carried. And if there's nothing else, a motion to adjourn at 8:13 p.m. Deputy Mayor Stockman and Councillor Hendricks. All those in favor? Opposed and carried.